The world disappeared in less than 3 seconds. One moment, Ronan Hayes was driving home after a long morning meeting, thinking about a funding proposal for his youth center and whether he should stop for coffee before heading back to work. The radio was playing softly. Traffic was light. Everything felt normal. Then a truck crossed the center line. The sound of metal crashing into metal exploded around him. Glass shattered. The steering wheel slammed against his chest. The road spun sideways. And then everything went dark. When Ronan opened his eyes again, nothing made sense. A bright ceiling hovered above him. Machines beeped somewhere nearby. His body felt impossibly heavy. Even breathing seemed difficult. For several seconds, he couldn't remember where he was, or why he was there. Then pain arrived. Not all at once. It spread through his body in waves, pulling him fully awake. A voice nearby immediately responded. "Easy. Don't try to sit up." Ronan turned his head. A man stood beside the hospital bed. Tall, dark hair, sharp features, white coat, professional posture. The stranger looked relieved the moment their eyes met. "Good," the man said quietly. "You're awake." Ronan swallowed painfully. "What happened?" "You were in a serious car accident." The answer came calmly. Measured. Practiced. The way someone spoke after saying the same thing many times. "You've been unconscious for several days." Several days. The information felt impossible to process. The doctor checked one of the monitors before looking back at him. "You suffered multiple fractures, internal injuries, and a concussion. You're lucky to be here." Lucky. Ronan wasn't sure lucky was the word he would have chosen. Every part of his body hurt. His thoughts felt slow, foggy, disconnected. The doctor continued checking his vitals. Then something strange happened. The man simply stood there looking at him. Not speaking, not writing notes. Just looking. For a moment, something emotional flashed across his face before disappearing again. Then he asked a question. "Do you remember me?" Ronan frowned. The question felt odd. Very odd. He studied the doctor's face. Nothing. No recognition. No memory. No clue. Should he know him? Ronan shook his head slightly. "I'm sorry." The doctor looked away. Only briefly. But Ronan noticed it. The disappointment. The way his jaw tightened. The way he immediately hid whatever emotion had appeared. Then the professional expression returned. "My name is Jesse Vale." Ronan nodded weakly. "Have we met before?" A short pause followed. "Yes." The answer came quietly. "When?" "A long time ago." That was all Jesse said. No explanation. No details. Nothing. Before Ronan could ask more questions, nurses entered the room and the conversation ended. Over the next few days, Ronan drifted between sleep and wakefulness. Doctors explained the extent of his injuries. Physical therapy would be necessary. Recovery would take months. His family visited when they could. His younger sister came almost every day. Several friends stopped by. Co-workers from a youth center sent messages and flowers. But strangely, the person Ronan saw most often wasn't family. It was Dr. Jesse Vale. At first, Ronan assumed it was coincidence. Then he started paying attention. Jesse always seemed to know exactly when he was awake. Always appeared before he requested something. Always noticed when his pain medication was wearing off. Always checked on him personally, even when other doctors could have handled it. One afternoon, Ronan finally asked about it. "You spent a lot of time here." Jesse glanced up from tablet. "It's my job." Ronan smiled faintly. "Pretty sure there are other patients." "There are. But you keep showing up." The corner of Jesse's mouth twitched slightly. For a second, it almost looked like he wanted to laugh. "Maybe you're difficult to get rid of." It was the first joke Ronan had heard from him, and somehow it felt important. Their conversations slowly became more natural after that. Not long conversations, just small ones. Questions, comments, stories about recovery. Yet Ronan found himself looking forward to them. One evening, after a difficult therapy session, he returned exhausted and frustrated. The physical therapist had managed to get him standing for a short time. Only for a short time. But even that felt humiliating. Before the accident, he had been active, independent. Now he needed help doing almost everything. He stared at the ceiling for nearly an hour. Angry, tired, discouraged. A knock came at the door. Jesse entered carrying a chart. One look at Ronan's face was enough. Tough day. Ronan laughed bitterly. That obvious? Very. Ronan looked away. I hate this. Jesse pulled a chair closer. Hating it is normal. I can barely stand. You stood. For 30 seconds. You stood. Ronan sighed. Jesse didn't offer fake encouragement. Didn't pretend everything would magically improve. He simply sat there. Present. Steady. For some reason, that helped more than motivational speeches ever could. After a few moments, Jesse stood to leave. As he adjusted his sleeve, something silver flashed beneath the cuff. A bracelet. Old. Worn. The kind of thing someone had owned for years. Ronan noticed it immediately. Jesse followed his gaze, instinctively covering it, almost protecting it. Nice bracelet. A strange expression crossed Jesse's face. Thanks. It looks important. Another pause. It is. Ronan waited. Jesse seemed to debate whether to continue. Finally, he said, quietly, it was a gift. From who? Jesse met his eyes. You. The answer landed like a stone. What? You gave it to me years ago. Ronan stared. He genuinely had no idea what Jesse was talking about. Nothing in his memory connected to that bracelet. Nothing connected to Jesse. Yet Jesse sounded completely certain. Not confused. Not mistaken. Certain. I don't remember. I know. For some reason that answer sounded sad. The conversation ended there. But Ronan couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, he barely slept. Questions kept circling through his head. Who exactly was Jesse? How had they known each other? Why had he given him a bracelet? And why did every answer seem tied to emotions Jesse refused to explain? The following afternoon brought another difficult therapy session. This one went worse. Halfway through a walking exercise, pain shot through Ronan's leg. His balance disappeared. Everything tilted. For a split second, he thought he was going down. Before he hit the floor, someone caught him. Strong hands gripped his arms, holding him upright, keeping him from falling. Ronan looked up. Jesse. His face had gone pale. Far paler than the situation justified. Are you hurt? The question came instantly. Too fast. Too worried. Ronan blinked. I'm okay. Are you sure? Yeah. Jesse continued holding him for another second before finally letting go. The physical therapist exchanged a brief look with him. A look Ronan noticed. Something passed silently between them. Then Jesse stepped back. Professional again. Controlled again. But the reaction lingered in Ronan's mind. That wasn't how doctors usually reacted. Not even good doctors. Later that evening, Jesse stopped by his room again. Ronan decided to test something. You looked terrified earlier. Jesse froze. Only for a moment. Then he continued reviewing the chart. You almost fell? People almost fall in physical therapy every day. No answer. Ronan studied him carefully. Why does it matter so much when it's me? The room became very quiet. Jesse's eyes remained on the chart. For several seconds, Ronan thought he wouldn't answer. Then Jesse finally spoke. Very softly. Because you don't know what it was like losing you once. The words slipped out before he could stop them. Silence followed. Jesse immediately closed the file. His expression changed, like someone realizing they had revealed too much. Forget I said that. Ronan stared at him. Losing me? But Jesse was already moving toward the door. Get some rest, Ronan. Jesse. No response. Wait. Jesse stopped, his hand resting on the door handle. For a moment, Ronan thought he might turn around, might explain, might finally tell him the truth. Instead, he simply said, good night. Then he walked out, leaving Ronan alone with a racing heartbeat and far more questions than answers. Several minutes later, unable to stop thinking about it, Ronan shifted carefully toward the window. Across the courtyard, lights still glowed in one of the administrative offices. A familiar figure sat alone inside. Jesse. He was holding something in his hands. A photograph. Even from a distance, Ronan could tell it was old. Jesse stared at it for several seconds, then lowered his head, as if remembering something painful. Something important. Something connected to him. Ronan watched until Jesse finally slipped the photograph back into a drawer and closed it. The next morning, he woke with the same questions, the same confusion, and a growing feeling that somewhere inside his damaged memory was a story he had forgotten. A story involving Dr. Jesse Vadi, a silver bracelet, an old photograph, and a past neither of them seemed ready to talk about. What Ronan didn't know yet was that the answers were much closer than he imagined, and recovering his memories would change far more than his understanding of the past. It would change the future waiting for both of them. Ronan Hayes spent the next several days thinking about Dr. Jesse Vale far more than he wanted to admit. At first, he blamed boredom. Recovery was slow. Hospital rooms were not exactly exciting places to spend time. Most of his days followed the same routine. Medication, checkups, physical therapy, more medication, more waiting. But deep down, Ronan knew that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was that Jesse made no sense. Every answer created 3 new questions. The bracelet, the photograph, the strange sadness in Jesse's eyes. And most of all, the sentence that kept replaying in Ronan's head. You don't know what it was like losing you once. Normal doctors didn't say things like that. Not to patients. Not unless something much deeper existed between them. Unfortunately, every time Ronan tried to ask about it, Jesse became frustratingly skilled at changing the subject. 3 days after their conversation, Ronan was finally allowed to start longer physical therapy sessions. The news should have made him happy. Instead, it terrified him. The first time he stood using only a cane for support, his entire body felt unstable. His injured leg trembled. Sweat covered his forehead within minutes. By the end of the session, he was exhausted. Back in his room, he collapsed onto the bed and closed his eyes. A few minutes later, someone knocked. Without opening his eyes, Ronan spoke. "Come in." The familiar voice arrived immediately. "Bad day." Ronan laughed softly. "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" "Because you look like you want to punch a wall." That made him smile despite himself. When he opened his eyes, Jesse was standing beside the bed holding a tablet. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Ronan said, "I almost fell again today." "I heard." "You hear everything?" "Pretty much." "That's concerning." Jesse shook his head. Occupational hazard. The conversation should have ended there. Instead, Ronan found himself watching Jesse. The dark hair, the calm expression, the way he always seemed composed even when everyone else around him looked stressed. Something about him felt familiar. Emotionally, like a song he almost remembered. "You know what's weird?" Ronan asked. "What?" "I still don't remember you." A flicker crossed Jesse's face. "Gone almost instantly. But sometimes it feels like I should." Jesse looked down at the chart. Memory doesn't always return all at once. "Did yours?" The question surprised him. Jesse looked up. "What do you mean?" "When you were younger. Did you ever lose something important and spend years thinking about it?" For the first time, Jesse seemed caught off guard. Then he smiled sadly. "Yes." Ronan waited. Jesse didn't elaborate. A few moments later, he excused himself and left, leaving Ronan once again feeling as if he had gotten close to an answer only to watch it disappear. That night, something strange happened. It wasn't a full memory, more like a flash, a fragment, a feeling. Ronan woke suddenly from a dream. Zen, a bus stop, someone sitting alone on a bench. The image vanished almost immediately, but his heart was racing. The dream felt important. The next morning, Jesse arrived during breakfast rounds. Ronan waited until they were alone. "I dreamed about rain." Jesse froze. Only briefly, but Ronan noticed. "Zen?" Jesse asked carefully. "A bus stop too." The room became silent. Jesse stared at him. For a moment, he looked as though he had stopped breathing. "What else do you remember?" "Nothing." The disappointment that crossed Jesse's face was impossible to miss. "I wish I did." Jesse looked away. "So do I." The rest of the visit felt different. Neither of them seemed able to focus on anything else. For Ronan, the dream represented proof that memories were returning. For Jesse, it clearly meant something much larger. That afternoon, Ronan's sister Emma arrived carrying coffee. After listening to him talk about Jesse for nearly 20 minutes, she narrowed her eyes. "You like him?" Ronan nearly choked. "What? You talk about him constantly." "He's my doctor." "Sure. I'm serious." "So am I." Emma grinned. "I've never seen you this interested in a doctor before. Because no doctor has ever acted this weird." She laughed. "You mean attractive?" Ronan rolled his eyes. "Leave." Instead of leaving, Emma sat down. "You know, he does look at you differently." Ronan paused. "What do you mean?" "I don't know." She shrugged. "Like he already knows you." The comment lingered long after she left, because it matched exactly what Ronan had been feeling. Jesse didn't look at him the way people looked at strangers. He looked at him the way people looked at memories. 2 days later, another therapy session pushed Ronan harder than ever before. For nearly an hour, he practiced walking longer distances. The pain was intense, but he refused to stop. Halfway through the session, dizziness hit him unexpectedly. The room tilted. His balance vanished. Again, before he could react, strong arms caught him. The physical therapist hadn't moved. Jesse had. He wasn't even supposed to be there. Yet somehow he appeared immediately. "Sit down." "I'm fine." "Seat." The firmness in Jesse's voice surprised everyone, including Ronan. A chair was brought over. Ronan sat. Jesse crouched beside him, checking his pulse, checking his breathing, checking everything. Only after several minutes passed did the tension leave his face. The physical therapist finally spoke. "You know he's not the only patient in the hospital, right?" Jesse stood. "Thanks for the reminder." But the teasing smile on the therapist's face suggested this wasn't the first time. Later that evening, Ronan couldn't stop thinking about the incident. Eventually, he asked the question directly. "Why were you there?" Jesse looked up from his notes. "Where?" "Therapy. I was checking on your progress." "No." Ronan shook his head. "You ran across the room." Silence. "You looked scared." More silence. Ronan held his gaze. Finally, Jesse sighed. "You were injured." "That's not the reason." Jesse closed the folder. Neither man looked away. For several seconds, the room felt unusually small. Then Jesse quietly said, "Some people matter more than they should." The words hit harder than Ronan expected. Before he could respond, Jesse stood and walked toward the door. Again, always retreating whenever the conversation became too personal. But this time Ronan wasn't willing to let go. "Jesse." He stopped. "What? Why do I matter?" The question hung between them. Jesse didn't answer. He simply left. The next morning brought another unexpected development. Ronan woke before sunrise, unable to sleep. The hallway outside his room was quiet. After several minutes, he carefully grabbed his cane and decided to walk a short distance. It took longer than expected, but eventually he reached one of the smaller waiting areas near the rehabilitation wing. That's when he saw Jesse. He was alone, sitting near a window, holding something, a photograph. The same photograph Ronan had seen from a distance before. This time he was close enough to see more. 2 teenage boys. One looked vaguely familiar. The other had his arm around him. Jesse was staring at the image, completely unaware that someone was approaching. Ronan took another step. The sound made Jesse look up. Immediately, he hid the photograph. Too late. Ronan had already seen enough. "Was that us?" Jesse didn't answer. "Jesse." Still silence. Then finally a small nod. Ronan sat across from him, his heart beating faster than it should. "How old were we?" 17 and 15. "You kept a photograph for all these years." Jesse looked down. "Apparently." The answer was meant to be casual. It failed completely. Because the emotion underneath, it was obvious. Ronan suddenly realized something. Nobody keeps a photograph for nearly 2 decades unless it means everything. The realization sent a strange feeling through him. Not discomfort, not fear, something else, something warmer, something he couldn't quite define. For several moments, neither man spoke. Then Ronan said quietly, "I want to remember." Jesse's eyes lifted. "I know." "No." Ronan leaned forward slightly. "I really want to remember." For the first time since they had met again, Jesse looked hopeful. Not guarded, not cautious. Hopeful. And somehow seeing that expression affected Ronan more than it should have. As they sat there in the early morning silence, another image flashed briefly through Ronan's mind. A younger Jesse, standing outside a school building, holding books against his chest, watching someone, watching him. The memory vanished almost immediately, but it left something behind. Recognition. Tiny, incomplete, yet undeniably real. Then, without thinking, he spoke the name again. Not because he had read it on a badge. Not because he remembered hearing it. But because somewhere deep inside the broken pieces of his memory, it finally felt familiar. Jesse. This time the name sounded different. Real. Personal. Jesse's eyes widened. For a second, he looked almost afraid to move. And for the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, Ronan felt certain of one thing. The answers were getting closer. Much closer. And whatever existed between him and Jesse before the accident was far more important than either of them had been willing to admit. The next week changed something between Ronan Hayes and Dr. Jesse Vadi. Neither of them talked about it directly. Neither of them acknowledged it. But it was there. The distance that had existed since Ronan woke up after the accident was slowly disappearing. His recovery continued moving forward. He could now walk short distances without assistance. The pain remained, but it no longer controlled every hour of his day. For the first time since the crash, he could imagine a future outside the hospital walls. And somehow, every time he imagined leaving, one thought kept appearing. He wouldn't see Jesse every day anymore. The realization bothered him far more than it should have. One afternoon, while finishing another rehabilitation session, Ronan found himself scanning the hallway, looking for someone. The moment he realized who he was looking for, he shook his head. This was ridiculous. Jesse was his doctor. Nothing more. At least that was what he kept telling himself. Unfortunately, his heart seemed unconvinced. As if proving that point, Jesse appeared around the corner a few seconds later. Ronan immediately felt himself relax. That alone was concerning. Therapy went well? Jesse asked. I survived. That's not the same thing. It is from my perspective. The corner of Jesse's mouth lifted slightly. That small smile had become more common lately. Not often, but enough for Ronan to notice. Enough for him to find himself wanting to see it again. They started walking slowly toward Ronan's room. Halfway there, Ronan stopped. A sharp sensation flashed through his head. Not pain. A memory. For one brief second, he saw a crowded gymnasium. Teenagers talking. Basketball banners hanging from the ceiling. Someone standing near the bleachers. Watching him. Then it vanished. Ronan grabbed the wall. Jesse immediately moved closer. What happened? I saw something. What? I don't know. Ronan closed his eyes. There was a gym. Jesse froze. A school gym. The reaction was immediate. Jesse's entire expression changed. What else? Nothing. Frustration hit Ronan immediately. The memory was gone before he could hold on to it. Jesse looked disappointed too, which somehow made Ronan feel worse. That evening, Ronan sat alone in his room, thinking about the growing collection of fragments. The bus stop, the rain, the school building, the gymnasium, the photograph. Jesse. Everything seemed connected. Yet the most important piece remained missing. A knock interrupted his thoughts. When the door opened, he expected Jesse. Instead, a stranger walked in. Mid-40s, athletic build, friendly face. The man stopped immediately after entering, then stared. Well, I'll be damned. Ronan frowned. Do I know you? The man laughed. Not anymore, apparently. Before Ronan could answer, Jesse appeared in the hallway. The second he saw the visitor, he stopped moving. For the first time since meeting him, Ronan saw genuine surprise on Jesse's face. Lucas. The visitor grinned. Look who's still recognizing people. Ronan looked between them. You know each other? Lucas laughed again. Buddy, I know both of you. The room suddenly became very interesting. Lucas pulled a chair closer. I was visiting my sister upstairs and heard a rumor that some idiot from my high school almost got himself killed. Thanks, Ronan said. You're welcome. Lucas turned toward Jesse. Haven't seen you in years. Almost 17 years. Yeah. The atmosphere shifted slightly. Not uncomfortable, just heavier. Like all three of them suddenly shared history that Ronan couldn't access. After several minutes of conversation, Lucas looked at Ronan carefully. You really don't remember him? Ronan shook his head. Some things are coming back. But not Jesse. Pieces. Lucas leaned back. For several seconds, he looked as though he was debating whether to say something. Then he shrugged. Honestly, that's crazy. Jesse immediately spoke. Lucas. The warning in his voice was obvious. Lucas ignored it. No, seriously. It's crazy. He looked directly at Ronan. Back then, everybody knew who Jesse was. Ronan waited. Lucas continued. Mostly because he followed you around like a shadow. Jesse groaned. Can we not do this? No. Lucas grinned. You were inseparable. Ronan stared. Inseparable. Pretty much. Lucas pointed toward Jesse. This guy showed up at school halfway through sophomore year. Didn't know anyone. Barely talked. Then he pointed at Ronan. And somehow you adopted him. Adopted him? That's the best word for it. For the first time, Ronan saw Jesse looking embarrassed. The sight was unexpectedly adorable. That realization created a completely different problem. Lucas continued talking. You dragged him into your friend group. You made him sit with us at lunch. You forced him to come to basketball games. You even got him volunteering with your community projects. As Lucas spoke, small flashes appeared in Ronan's mind. Not complete memories. Moments. Jesse sitting beside him in a cafeteria. Jesse carrying boxes during a charity event. Jesse standing awkwardly near a basketball court. The images disappeared almost instantly, but they were becoming clearer, more real. Lucas noticed. You remembered something. Maybe. Jesse watched him carefully, hope flickering behind his eyes. Then Lucas said something that changed everything. You know what the funniest part was? Neither man answered. Lucas smiled. That kid was completely obsessed with you. Silence. The room went completely silent. Jesse closed his eyes. Lucas. Oh, come on. You promised. I promised not to tell embarrassing stories. Lucas pointed at Ronan. This isn't embarrassing. It's history. Ronan felt his heartbeat quicken. What do you mean obsessed? Jesse stood up. I'm leaving. Lucas laughed. See? Same reaction after 17 years. Jesse was already moving toward the door. Ronan acted without thinking. Wait. Jesse stopped. The room became quiet again. Ronan looked directly at him. What did he mean? Jesse didn't answer. Lucas suddenly seemed less amused. The joking expression faded. For the first time, something serious appeared. You really don't remember. No. Lucas exhaled slowly. Then he looked at Jesse. Jesse gave a tiny shake of his head. Lucas understood immediately. Whatever secret existed between them, it clearly wasn't his place to reveal. I should go. The mood had completely changed. He stood up. Before leaving, he paused beside Ronan's bed. Then he said something strange. Just remember one thing. What? Lucas glanced toward Jesse. Then back to Ronan. When your memories come back, don't waste time. The statement lingered after he left. The room felt different now. Smaller. More tense. Ronan looked at Jesse. Jesse looked everywhere except at him. Finally, Ronan broke the silence. Was Lucas telling the truth? About what? About us being close. Jesse nodded. Yes. That close. Another nod. Ronan stared at him. The idea felt impossible. How could someone be that important and simply disappear from memory? Then again, the accident had already proven that memory wasn't reliable. After several seconds, Ronan spoke quietly. I'm sorry. Jesse frowned. For what? For forgetting. The answer surprised both of them. For a moment, neither knew what to say. Then Jesse laughed softly. Not because it was funny. Because it hurt. You didn't choose that. Still. Jesse looked away. Ronan noticed his hand tightening around the chart he was holding. A small sign of emotion breaking through his usual control. Then Jesse said something that completely changed the atmosphere. You only forgot because of the accident. What does that mean? A long silence followed. Jesse seemed to be choosing his words carefully. Finally he spoke. Some people spend years trying to forget. The sentence carried far more meaning than Ronan understood. but he could feel the weight behind it. And somehow he knew the words weren't about memory loss. They were about pain, about heartbreak, about something that happened long before the accident, something connected to him. The realization left a knot in his stomach. That night Ronan couldn't sleep. Around midnight, he got out of bed and slowly walked toward one of the quieter sections of the hospital. He didn't have a destination in mind. He just needed movement, needed air, needed answers. Eventually, he reached a small outdoor terrace used by patients. And there he found Jesse, alone, leaning against the railing, looking out into the darkness. Neither man seemed surprised anymore when they found each other unexpectedly. Ronan moved closer. "You always work this late?" "Most nights." "That sounds unhealthy." Jesse smiled. "So does getting hit by trucks." "Fair." The conversation faded. Silence settled comfortably between them. Not awkward, not forced, comfortable. That realization felt dangerous. After a while, Ronan spoke. "Lucas said, I changed your life." Jesse looked down. "He talks too much." Was he wrong? The answer didn't come immediately. When Jesse finally spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. "No." Ronan's chest tightened. "Ow!" Jesse laughed quietly. The sound carried years of emotion. "One day, you'll remember." "What if I don't?" Jesse turned toward him. For several seconds, neither looked away. Then Jesse said the words that stayed with Ronan long after the conversation ended. "You will." The certainty in his voice was absolute, as if he had waited 17 years for that moment, as if he believed in Ronan's memories more than Ronan himself did. And for the first time since waking up in the hospital, Ronan began wondering if finding those missing memories wasn't the thing he wanted most. Maybe what he wanted most was understanding why every time Jesse walked away, it felt like losing something important all over again. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the broken memories and unanswered questions, a feeling was beginning to grow. Not recognition, not yet, but something dangerously close. The closer Ronan Hayes got to leaving the hospital, the more restless he became. At first, he thought it was anxiety about recovery. His doctors were pleased with his progress. He could walk without assistance for short periods now. Most of the major injuries were healing. If everything continued going well, he would be discharged within a few days. That should have made him happy. Instead, every time someone mentioned going home, a strange feeling settled in his chest. Because going home meant leaving Jesse behind. The realization had become impossible to ignore. During the weeks since the accident, Jesse had become the first person Ronan looked for every morning and the last person he thought about every night. Somehow, without either of them planning it, their conversations had become the best part of his day. And that scared him. Not because he didn't enjoy it, because he enjoyed it too much. 3 days before his discharge, Ronan sat in the rehabilitation room after another therapy session. His leg hurt. His shoulder hurt. Everything hurt. Jesse arrived carrying a file. "You're improving. I feel like I'm falling apart." "That's still an improvement from 2 weeks ago." Ronan laughed. The sound surprised both of them. There had been a time when laughter felt impossible. Now it happened almost naturally around Jesse. The realization wasn't helping. Jesse sat beside him and reviewed some notes. Neither spoke for a minute. Then Ronan asked quietly, "What happens after I leave?" Jesse looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean after I leave." The answer sounded simple, yet neither man seemed willing to treat it that way. Jesse closed the file. "You continue physical therapy." "That's not what I meant." The silence that followed carried more meaning than either of them wanted to acknowledge. Finally, Jesse stood. "I should get back to work." And just like that, the conversation ended. Again, Ronan watched him walk away. Again, and for the first time, frustration began replacing confusion. Jesse kept getting close, then retreating, opening the door, then shutting it. Every single time. That evening, Ronan couldn't stop thinking about it. Around midnight, he was still awake. His room was dark except for the light coming from the hallway. After nearly an hour of staring at the ceiling, he got out of bed. Walking was easier now. Not comfortable, but possible. Eventually, he reached one of the quieter hallways near the administrative offices. That's when he saw light beneath a partially open door. Jesse's office. The room appeared empty. Ronan wasn't trying to snoop. At least that's what he told himself. But when he passed the doorway, something on the desk caught his attention. A photograph. The same photograph. The one Jesse always kept hidden. Ronan stopped. The office remained empty. He hesitated, then stepped closer. The picture was old. Two teenage boys standing beside each other in a high school gymnasium. One was obviously Ronan, 17 years younger, smiling, healthy, carefree. The other was Jesse, thinner, younger, shyer, yet unmistakably Jesse. Ronan picked up the photograph. On the back, written in faded ink, were 7 words. The first person who made me stay. His chest tightened. Before he could process the meaning, another item slid from beneath the picture. A folded letter. Old. Worn. The paper had clearly been opened and reread countless times. Ronan stared at it. Part of him knew he shouldn't. Part of him knew it was private. Then his eyes caught his own name. And everything changed. Slowly, he unfolded the letter. The handwriting was unmistakably Jesse's. Ronan, I know I'll probably never give you this, but if I don't write it down, I think it'll drive me crazy. The room suddenly felt smaller. His heartbeat accelerated. He kept reading. Every sentence pulled him deeper into something he didn't yet understand. Jesse wrote about school, about loneliness, about being terrified when he transferred into a new town, about feeling invisible. Then came the line that stopped Ronan cold. You're the first person who's ever made me feel like I belong somewhere. His hands trembled. The next paragraph hit even harder. I know you probably don't feel the same way, and that's okay. I just needed you to know the truth. I think I've been in love with you for a long time. The words blurred. Not because the writing was unclear, because something was happening inside Ronan's head. A sharp pain exploded behind his eyes. The room vanished, and memories crashed into him all at once. The gymnasium, the cafeteria, the basketball court, Jesse sitting alone, Jesse carrying books through the hallway, Jesse laughing during volunteer events, Jesse watching him from across crowded rooms. Then another memory, one he had completely forgotten. A letter. This letter. A younger Jesse handing it to him after school. Nervous, terrified, hopeful. The memory shifted. Students whispering, passing copies, laughing. The letter had somehow spread throughout the school. Then came the part Ronan never wanted to remember. The courtyard. Dozens of students watching. Jesse standing alone. Humiliated. Cornered. And himself. 17 years old. Scared. Panic spreading through his chest as rumors exploded around campus. People asking questions. Making assumptions. Laughing. Mocking. And then the words. The words he had buried for nearly 2 decades. I only helped him because I felt bad for him. Laughter. More laughter. Then the second sentence. The worst sentence. Who would even think something like that? The crowd erupted. Jesse's face fell. The heartbreak in his eyes was immediate. Visible. Unforgettable. And Ronan had forgotten it. Until now. The memory continued. Jesse turning away. Walking off. Trying not to cry. Then disappearing. Another flash. Ronan running after him later that afternoon. Searching the school. Searching the neighborhood. Searching everywhere. But Jesse never appeared. The next day, he learned Jesse's family had moved away overnight. Gone. Without goodbye. Without closure. Without another chance. The memory stopped. Ronan nearly collapsed against the desk. His breathing became uneven. His stomach twisted violently. 17 years. 17 years Jesse had carried that pain. And somehow, after everything, Jesse had still stayed beside his hospital bed. Still helped him recover. Still protected him. Still cared. The realization shattered him. Footsteps approached. Ronan looked up. Jesse stood frozen in the doorway. For several seconds, neither moved. Neither spoke. The photograph remained in Ronan's hand. The letter remained open. Jesse immediately understood. His face lost all color. You read it. Not a question. A statement. Ronan couldn't answer. Because his throat had completely closed. Jesse looked exhausted. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. like a man who had spent years trying to keep an old wound buried. Slowly, he stepped into the office. You weren't supposed to find that. Ronan finally found his voice. I remember. Everything stopped. Jesse froze completely. The room became silent. Ronan took a shaky breath. I remember all of it. No reaction. No movement. Nothing. Then Jesse looked away, as if the words physically hurt. I remember the letter. Silence. The courtyard. Silence. The things I said. Jesse closed his eyes. For 1 second, Ronan thought he saw tears. When Jesse opened them again, the composure was gone. Not completely, but enough. Enough for Ronan to see the damage that had never fully healed. I didn't mean those things. The words came out broken. Too late. 17 years too late. Jesse laughed softly. Not because anything was funny. Because there was no other response left. Maybe. No. Ronan stepped forward. I was scared. I know. You know. Jesse nodded. I figured that out eventually. The answer somehow made everything worse. Because Jesse had spent years understanding him, while Ronan had forgotten him entirely. Pain filled his chest. Not physical pain. Something far deeper. I searched for you. For the first time, Jesse looked genuinely surprised. What? I searched for you after that. The confession slipped out. Raw. Honest. I went to your house. Jesse stared. I went to school the next morning. His voice cracked. You were already gone. The room felt impossibly small. Neither man moved. Neither looked away. Years of distance seemed to collapse into a single moment. Then Ronan said the truth he had only just realized. The thing I remember most isn't what I said. Jesse's eyes filled slowly. Ronan took another step closer. It's that I didn't find you in time. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Jesse looked down. A tear finally escaped. Just one. But it was enough. Ronan had never seen Jesse cry before. Not once. And somehow that single tear hurt more than any memory. Jesse wiped it away quickly. Tried to regain control. Tried to rebuild the walls. But the walls were already cracking. Because for the first time in 17 years, they were standing in the same room with the same truth. No missing memories. No unanswered questions. No confusion. Only the past. And whatever came next. The problem was that neither of them knew what came next. Jesse finally stepped back. Not running away. Not leaving. Just creating a little distance. As if he needed room to breathe. Ronan understood. He didn't stop him. Didn't chase him. Didn't ask for forgiveness. Some wounds were too deep for that. Instead, he simply stood there watching the man he had finally remembered. The man who had waited beside his hospital bed. The man whose photograph never left a drawer. The man who had somehow carried both love and heartbreak for 17 years. And for the first time since the accident, Ronan understood exactly why seeing Jesse every day had started to matter so much. Because somewhere beneath the guilt, beneath the memories, beneath everything that had happened, there was still something between them. Something unfinished. Something neither of them had escaped. And as Jesse stood across from him with tears still shining in his eyes, Ronan realized one terrifying truth. Remembering the past wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. And that's where we'll leave Ronan and Jesse for now. After 17 years of silence, lost memories, and unanswered questions, the truth is finally out. But remembering the past may be the easiest part of their journey. Can Jesse truly forgive the man who broke his heart? And can Ronan prove that what he feels now is more than guilt? The next chapter is already available on Patreon. You'll find a link in this video's description. Members get early access, full uninterrupted stories, exclusive content, and complete series without waiting for future uploads. Thank you so much for watching, supporting the channel, and being part of this journey. See you in the next chapter.